Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is going to be the second in a series of where I talk about how I would run AD&D First Edition for the modern player. So today I'm going to focus on character generation, but I have a little bit of shopkeeping to take care of first. So the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to make it very, very clear because the last video had a tremendous outpouring of both comments and I have been commenting back and views and subscriber explosion off of that video and so I can really see that this particular topic and this series is something that people really want to hear about, and so I'm really encouraged and thankful for the engagement that I've had so far on the on that video, and but there were a few things I wanted to clear up. So number one, this is how I would run AD&D First Edition for the modern player. You might use different resources. You might have a different take on the various resources that I'm using, and you might actually not really see where I'm going with this yet, because it's going to evolve over the series of videos that I'm going to be doing. But I've had one comment that was like, well, just disregard the modern player and just run it for, the people that, that are already here and already playing the system. And, I just literally pointed out that, none of us are getting any younger. And I would really like to bring to the modern player Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition and have them experience it. And along the way, and as I am developing this process of explaining the game system and explaining how I would utilize it for that purpose, yes, I will make some compromises, and those kinds of compromises take place every time you're running anytime you're running a game system for players, even if they're your most experienced players and they're very familiar with the game system that you're doing. Anytime a group of people sit down at a table preparing to begin a campaign, and in my experience and perspective, a campaign is something that you're not going to run for 6 sessions. That I call a mini campaign. A campaign, I always put it into the mindset of, we're going to be playing this for months and possibly even years, and that includes the player characters, and I'll get into that as well, because player characters in AD&D First Edition do, they do succumb to their injuries. They do die, probably more often than what the modern player, being only experienced with, let's say, 5e or even Pathfinder, first or second edition, might be accustomed to. But that is the kind of bridge that I think needs to be gapped and talk about, or crossed over, I should say, and talk about the the aspects of that and how it really leads to a different, and in my opinion, a better experience of character development. And so I'm going to go into greater detail there as well. Another comment that had come up was that, and this might have been just because they didn't hear me say it, or, they didn't they didn't fully understand what I did say on the aspect is that I by no means argued that that the Dungeon Master's Guide is is well written or certainly not well organized, and even the process of having to create a character, and I'm going to show you all of the various steps that I would use in creating a character, and it's it's a daunting task because you have to use so many different resources at the same time. In doing that, it's not well organized, and it reminds me of a comment that Robert Kuhns just recently made, where he says, you have to realize that those original founders of the game, uh, they weren't game designers. In many cases, they weren't even writers. They were, they didn't know anything about layout or, or game design or, how to format everything so that it kind of flows really well. Most of them were just learning as they went. Dave Arneson wasn't even he wasn't a writer, he wasn't a game designer, he was the ideas guy. Gary Gygax was organized in, probably doing calculations and things like that. He was an insurance, I believe he was an insurance salesperson before he started, before he started working on this project. And he was a war gamer, so systems crunching and that kind of stuff he was adept at, but certainly not running a business was his other failing as well. But these were just younger individuals, some of them in their early 20s, and at the oldest possibly 30 or approaching 30, and they were putting together something that had never been done before. So even when Gary Gygax started putting together AD&D First Edition, there are things that are cumbersome in getting all of the systems to actually come together and create a character. And again, I'm going to show you that. But it doesn't take away from the fact that those individual components do create a game system that, again, in my opinion, a game system that truly captures what heroic fantasy, adventure gaming, or role playing, if you want to make that extension. I know some people argue against that. AD&D or Dungeons and Dragons in itself is just a war game, or some have even said it's a board game trying to pose as a role playing game. But I would argue against that. I would say that you can certainly role play. You could certainly role play Dungeons and Dragons and advanced Dungeons and Dragons without having all of those other bells and whistles and layers to go about, to surround it. But anyway, so the other thing I wanted to do as far as housekeeping is concerned is that I did not mention, and I really should have, another required component that I would not run this game without is the Dungeon Master screen. Now, I in particular like this one. It's the second printing of it, so you can tell from the covers. But there's other components in this that I find really useful, and that is that there's the player character ability summary sheet that is on the outside cover, which I would copy this, like photocopy this, and then hand it out just the section for each of the players based on the character that they're playing. And then I would, although I would change the monk. I would not use the monk because even Gary Gygax said the monk that was in Oriental Adventures is a better class to use overall. I might actually not even use monks the next time that I run AD&D First Edition for a new group of players and modern players, if at that as well. But the player-facing portions of this screen, you have all the spell tables on both ends here, and then interior obviously is going to be the attack matrix, which is very, very important to have right in your face. So you're not going to be using the Dungeon Master's Guide for the attack matrix and for the money systems or basic equipment. I mean, this has everything that you would need here on this first panel for that type of information. And then the second screen is going to have additional attack matrix, the attack matrix for monsters, the saving throw chart, your clerical affecting undead, so the turning matrix, saving throws for items and such, combined weapons tables, so you have additional weapons tables here, hurled weapons and missiles, and gaze attacks, armor class table, and so on and so forth. And then the player facing panels here is, I don't know why encounter reactions is on the players facing side. I would have certainly put that on the interior and maybe moved this combined weapons tables to the outside so that they could see it as well. Detection of invisibility table, the wall climbing table, feet per round of climbing. There's the surprise table. Again, all of these shouldn't be player forward facing. They should be DM facing. Listening at doors. All right, that's fine for them to see their chances at doing that. And then types of armor and encumbrance, which is, I guess fine for them to see, and directions of attack if you're using hex or square or triangle for it. But this is invaluable and you really need to use it. So that all being said, let me now switch over to talking about creating and generating a character. Now this might actually take more than one episode because there is quite a bit. But let me go to the first step in this process and let me make sure that you will be looking at the correct thing. And there we go. So I'm going to switch views now. So as you can see, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the method for creating a character and the method that I would use for generating a character. So I use method number 1, and I will expand this here so that you can see what I'm talking about. So method number 1, all scores are recorded. I'm sorry, not method number 1. I'm sorry, it is method number 1. All scores are recorded and arranged in an order the player desires. 4d6 are rolled, and the lowest die, or the lower, is discarded. So that's the first thing that I would do, all right, is have the players roll 4d6, dropping the lowest, and then seeing what score that generates, and then they get to place those scores as they wish. Now I'm going to switch to this right here, and let me make sure that you're looking at the same thing. So what I did was I created just a clear space. I have the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons character sheet that is up here. This is using Roll20 in case you're not familiar. And I created a I created an attributes rolling macro. All right, and so I can adjust this as I wish once I make this roll. So I'm going to have you just watch this. It's very, very simple to do. And there goes my roll. I hate the color of these dice, by the way, but well, holy cow, that's a pretty darn good roll. All right, so you can see I rolled a 12, a 16, 11, a 9, a 16, and a 16. So this character is going to be pretty exceptional, to be honest with you. So I can choose any class based on these rolls because I have enough 16s to put around where I can say, all right, this is a pretty well designed character. So I am going to make the very basic human fighter. All right, and so I will go a 16 in strength, a 16 in dexterity, and a 16 in constitution. And then I have a 12, an 11, and a 9. Let's go with, I'm not using comeliness, so let's just go with a 12 in, let's go with some leadership quality here. So a 12 in there. I will go and a 9 in intelligence and 11 in wisdom. All right, so and I'll talk about the adjustments later on, but let's just start with this here. And like I said, a very, very good roll. I was really lucky with some of these rolls here. So so that's the first thing that you get out of the way. All right, is you select your method of rolling. The next thing that you're going to do, and this is where I get to the problem with AD&D First Edition, and that is that this stuff should be like character creation. All of this character creation information should be in the player's handbook. All right. So now we're going to come over here and player character non-professional skills. So this is kind of like their background skills. So I highly recommend that you do this, and I would certainly always use this. So I would roll this here, and I'm going to roll a D100. Now you can have the players roll this if you want, or you can even have them select one of these, but not rolling twice, and not taking no skill of measurable worth. So you can have them choose it if you wish, but you just inform them that there's no way that they'll get nothing and there's no way that they'll get 2. If they wish to roll it, then and then you're giving them that option, and I'll just do a really quick D100 roll here and see what I end up with. So I'm ending up with an 80, and so this character's background skill would be, well, I'm not going to do that one, so let's redo that roll here. And a 50. So a 50 is a shipwright, boats or ships. All right, so and I will just put that into the, just for now, I'll just put that in notes, right? So under notes, I'll put shipwright. Just by doing that, you are going to start to generate a character concept. You're going to start to generate that, and you're going to start to get a sense of, well, yeah, my character is a fighter, and his background skill is a shipwright. He probably got that from his family and whatnot. We haven't even gotten to any of the other choices that that the player will make in further developing their character. And we're still just dealing with a first level character here. So now the next aspect that we're going to go to is, now that I kind of have a sense of these are my character traits and everything, let's see what else is in the DMG for creating a character. So character age and diseases and death. So you can roll character age. What I have always done, and I would probably continue doing, is I like to say, once a player tells me what his or her class and race is going to be, I take the lowest age for that class and race combo, right? So if they say that they're playing a dwarf, the dwarf character is going to be, and let's say a dwarf fighter, then that character is going to be 45 years old. The very, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 45 years old. So the very minimum for a dwarf fighter. All right, if it's a dwarf cleric, that cleric is going to be 252 years old. Or a thief, it is the dwarf thief is going to be 78 years old. The reason why I use the lowest possible age is because I want the player to focus on their character development in the moment and moving forward. All right, not so much looking back. All right, looking back is looking back at the life that they had pre-adventuring. All right, and so that's why they have this background skill here, or secondary skill as they call it here. So that is the skill that they acquired probably from their youth with their family. What, where they're getting that from. All right, everything else moving forward, I want them to be in the moment and moving forward, developing this character over time. So let's see what else they have here. Age categories. So you will have the adjustments to their ability scores here. So all of my characters will typically be, or all my players' characters will typically be young adults, and so they will all lose 1 point of wisdom and gain 1 point of constitution. And then moving forward, those will start to change over time. So they have to consider that when they're creating their character to make sure that they hit the mandatory minimums. Once they start adjusting these things, they might have to change up where they place an ability score under those circumstances. And let's see what else there is here that is going to be necessary for character generation. Not at the moment. So now I'm going to switch to the player's handbook. And we're going to go to character classes. So here you have your various tables for the attribute scores. Let me make sure you're looking at the same thing. So we have strength, and if you're familiar at all with Dungeons and Dragons, so if you are a 5e player, or even if you're a Pathfinder player, you know these stats pretty much. They're almost identical there. The only exception is that AD&D First Edition does have minimums and maximums based on either race or gender. The only time that some of these really do come into play is when, let's say you have a female human fighter. If she doesn't start off with an 18 in strength, she's not going to have exceptional strength anyway, and so it becomes a moot point. All right. But if they do have that, then there's different ways that you can make this. So if I had a female player, I've had female players in my game before. If she said that she wants to play a fighter, and she's rolling for and she actually has an 18 strength, and she's going to go for that exceptional. I could say, listen, instead of you rolling it, if you want to be truly exceptional and everything, I'll just give you the maximum exceptional strength for your, rather than you rolling it, you'll just get that, that 1876 for a, well, actually, it's going to be lower for a female. Let's say an 1875 maximum strength possible for a male elf or a female half orc or whatnot. If a female human, it would be 1850. I says, you could just get the 1850 without having to roll it. I would just give them the maximum point for it. Then you have your adjustments here that are based on, and like I said, you're probably familiar with these, even if you're coming from, D&D 5e or Pathfinder. These are pretty much standard coming across the board. So you're going to check to see what each of the attribute scores actually do as far as your bonuses. So strength here gives you hit probability with melee weapons, and damage adjustment also with melee weapons. So it gives you both, hit and damage increases based on those. Intelligence, I do a bit of a homebrew with intelligence for magic users. All right, so what I do is, if you can see the same bonuses that take place here, right? So you have pluses, all the way up to +3 for, your 18s or whatnot. What I like to do is, instead of doing the pluses on languages, I like to give them, a plus for spell ability. All right, so if they have a 16, they're going to have one additional first level spell. If they have a 17 intelligence, they will have 1 second and 1 first additional spell. And if they have an 18, they will have 1 third, 1 second, and 1 first level spell. So I like to give them a little bit of a bonus in their number of spells that they can actually learn. I know they give them increases here, but this is the number of spells, minimum number of spells per level, and the maximum number of spells per level. So they do give some bonuses here based on that, but that doesn't equate to casting ability. All right, that's just what they can memorize and what they can, have in their spell books and whatnot. So I like to give them a little bit more casting ability. I do the same thing with wisdom for spell casting. So a magic attack adjustment. You see how they have +1, +2, +3, and +4. Well, a 15 charisma wisdom character would get a +1, 1 additional first level spell. At 16, 1 additional second level spell. At 17, 1 additional third level, and at 18, 1 additional fourth level spell. So I just kind of translate that over to being able to cast additional spells based on their wisdom table. No other real modifiers that I do there. So what that ultimately produces is in total, what that's going to produce is a slightly more powerful and useful first level character. So they're not going to feel so virtually useless, at that first level. The other thing that I do on a uniformly across almost every game system that I run, the other thing that I do is max hit points. Based on hit die, max hit points at first level. That is to make them just a little bit more survivable. And like I said, I don't just do that for modern players. I do that for all of my players. And like I said, not just AD&D First Edition or D&D Beckme or any of those. I do it across the board. So we could be running Castles and Crusades. I do the same thing. We can be doing we could be doing Call of Cthulhu and or any place where I mean certainly old edition Call of Cthulhu, any place where there are hit die, and at first level, instead of having them roll it, I give them the maximum. I do it with Shadow Dark as well. I give them maximum hit points at first level because some of these games, a first level character is going to be kind of squishy. And so even a fighter, could potentially be squishy if you roll a 1 on your D10 for their hit points at start. And even with a Constitution bonus, it's not effective to have a first level fighter, oftentimes not able to afford the best of armor, starting off with just with just 4 or 5 hit points. It really can't be a frontline fighter with that amount of hit points because the weapons are still going to do oftentimes a D6 or a D8, whatever they happen to be facing, and that's certainly enough to kill even a frontline fighter with a single strike. And I experienced this. Running with my my AD&D First Edition campaign with very experienced players, and there were several occasions where the thief, who I believe at the time he was maybe second level, and 8 hit points. 8 hit point damage from an orc swinging a scimitar took him down to, I think the one time was like -4, because he was already injured, but it took him down to -4, and then he had to make a system shock in order to survive and all that kind of stuff. And it was, it is a very, very unforgiving system if you're having them roll those that first hit die rather than just giving a maximum. So that's another thing that I do across the board, regardless of the experience or the experience of the player, or what game system they're coming from, or what generation of player they are. So let's get to the next thing that I include. So I'm going to switch views once again, and let's go to the next thing that I use. So this goes back to fleshing out the character a little bit beyond what what they have on the basic character sheet as a fighter or whatnot. So I like to use both survival guides. So I have the Dungeoneer Survival Guide and the Wilderness Survival Guide. So let's keep in mind our character that we already started to flesh out here. So we have a fighter. I said we was going to keep him a human fighter. He's young. So actually, if he's young, he's going to add a point of Constitution, and so that will become a 17, and lose a point of Wisdom. So that will become a 10. All right. Did I just raise? I just raised Dexterity. So let's do point of Constitution. All right, and we'll come back here to these survival guides. So there are craftsman proficiencies, and here we have a boatwright. All right, so here we have a boatwright, and I would certainly hope that the player will choose that for his character, because it will match up with their background, right? Or they could take something else along that route as well. adventuring proficiencies. So here they can choose adventuring proficiencies, and here we have boating. All right. So again, keep on building up that keep on building up that character concept. All right. And so it would make sense for them to do so. Now, if we're using the Wilderness Survival Guide, and they tell you what each of the classes have as far as their number of non weapon proficiencies versus non-weapon proficiencies. So a fighter, since we're dealing with fighter, would have 4 weapon proficiencies and 2 non-weapon proficiencies. So they can certainly pull from either of these 2 books. We have boating here, again, wilderness proficiency. We probably have sailing, which might be different, but there's rope use, which would also make sense for them to use as well. And considering that dexterity, rope use might become something, something very useful for them to have, because they'll be skilled at using that. And again, the reason why I'm doing this, all right, the reason why I'm suggesting that you do this is because these non-weapon proficiencies are not going to have an impact on the combat effectiveness of characters. What they're going to have an impact on is the player's ability to generate a concept for their character, and to role play that in particular as time goes on, because the rest of the party members, you're hoping that the rest of the party members kind of are aware of what their fellow PCs have as far as their backgrounds and their background skills and their non-weapon proficiencies. And when they come across situations, they'll start interacting with each other and say, hey, wait a second, don't you know how to tie these really really great knots and everything, and this will make it much more easier for us to to haul this this loot across the floor. Don't you know how to create a pulley or something like that, so that we can hoist something up, and it becomes part of their both their character development and also their interaction with their fellow adventurers. And so this is something that that experienced players are looking to create. There's supposed to be 3 elements of role playing, right? You have your your combat interaction, you have your social interaction, and then other things. I'm gonna have to pause this for a second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that interruption. So where did I leave off? So background skills and everything, and those non-weapon proficiencies, I think, are very important for you to kind of generate a character concept. And you can see how piece by piece they start coming together, and it helps I think it helps the player start to really get into their character, even though their character, in comparison to like a game system like 5e, they don't have that very expansive action economy kind of thing to rely upon. They're basically going to get, a full movement plus an action, or a half movement, action, half movement, and that's pretty much it. There is no bonus actions or anything like that with some of these older editions of of Dungeons and Dragons. And so you don't start getting those other traits and feats and everything until you really start getting into the splat books and the kits that are found in AD&D second edition. So AD&D first edition is basically giving you those background skills and those non-weapon proficiencies. So I would definitely utilize those for creating a character for new players in AD&D First Edition. So let's see, what's the next book up that I wanted to talk about? And I'm going to talk about this very, very briefly because I know a lot of people reject this, and there's not a lot I'm going to use out of Unearthed Arcana. So again, this is if I were to be running this for a new group of players. And so Unearthed Arcana, the only things that I'm really going to use out of this, and like I said, I'm not going to use comeliness, which is found in here. I'm not going to use some of these classes either. So I'm not going to use Cavaliers. I always thought that was a broken class to begin with, nor Barbarians, nor Thief Acrobats. I will use the character spells. So the class spells that are introduced here, some of the weapon and armor, so mostly just equipment and spells coming out of here. I will use cantrips, and give them the same options to have those various cantrips, and utilize those. But other than that, because there's a ton of stuff in here, and if I want to stay as close to AD&D First Edition pre, 1980, 86 or so. When was this first published here? 85. So if I wanted to keep it as close to just the core 3 rule books, then that's the only part that I would include here. I like some of the new spells and everything, but what I would do is I would utilize the new spells only as scrolls that they could find along the way, and so kind of give them something a little bit beyond what is the more common spells that they have. And same thing with magic items as well. I would use them kind of sparingly and make it, almost like a, hey, you found something that is not commonplace, in your swords of wizardry, a school of wizardry, or in your, in your temple for clerics or whatnot. So I would have that. I would have that kind of separation between the two different spell listings or treasure items and such as well. So I would rely a little bit less on Unearthed Arcana than I did previously. All right, so and that is something. That reminds me, because someone else mentioned, hey, I don't see that you're talking about the Fiend Folio or the the Monster Manual too. And for the most part, I've always just had this perception of the Fiend Folio is that there's just a heavy reliance on psionics in Fiend Folio, and I hate psionics in AD&D First Edition. So that's my own bias against it, and so, I'm not going to utilize a lot of those creatures that are in the Fiend Folio. I mean, some of them are iconic, creatures like the Githyanki and others, but not going to do it. I'm more inclined to use the Monster Manual too. But I would use the Monster Manual to kind of later on. That's when I start introducing some of those more, those different giant types, or, and other creatures along those lines as well. So I utilize the Monster Manual too a little bit more so than I do the Fiend Folio, but I would still hold off on those once the players are really into a long-standing campaign. Then I like to change things up a little bit and throw that at them. The other thing I just want to make clear, I mean, you can see it behind me as well. This is my collection of AD&D, I know some people were saying, well, you have other stuff on that shelf. And yes, because they were asking, what are the soft covers for AD&D? And they're not necessarily soft covers for AD&D. I mean, this is, the blue one is Bluehole. I keep my D&D Beckme books on this shelf here, and you can see my rules encyclopedia. But I do have my Dragon magazines here, my best ofs, and I utilize those for AD&D First Edition as well. And I have the book of both books of Lairs, and those can always be drawn upon too, because those are all written to AD&D First Edition anyway. So they are First Edition booklets. They're just not part of the core 13 hardcovers. Now I have 14 hardcovers here because I have both deities and demigods. So I have the original and I have the the modified, where they removed the Elric and the Cthulhu mythos from them. If I were using deities and demigods, I would use the 144. I would use the Cthulhu mythos for certain in the next game world that I run for AD&D First Edition. I think that would be pretty cool to have a Cthulhu cult rising up in the world of Greyhawk and really kind of just change things up and make that something that is unique to that particular campaign that I'm running. So I'm starting to push along around like 46 minutes long or so. So let me just take a look at my my selection of other things here that I was going to talk about. Nope, that's all of the books and everything that I was going to talk about. So I'm going to wrap this one up, but I'm going to wait for your responses to see if there's anything that you think that I skipped over. The character generation is not yet complete. So what I will do is I will start to put together that character so that the next time that I come back with the next episode, then you'll be able to see where that character stands. So I'm going to complete that character out with all of his or her modifiers and whatnot, and then talk about my choices of weapons and we'll roll up and see what armor they could afford at first level and everything. So you will see that character fully played out. Now I chose a human fighter based on the random rolls that I got there, but the human fighter is two things. Number one, it's one of the easiest classes to learn and to play, and number two, it is actually the most common D&D class race combo, including you would never know this, but including in 5e. I mean, this came from Wizards of the Coast, where they've done surveys and everything, and the human fighter still kind of stands out as being the most common player character class that players choose. And I think that's pretty much uniform throughout the entire 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I am really appreciative and encouraged by the reception that this series has received. I am going to create a whole new playlist for this series, and like I said, I will take a look at your comments and see what episode 3 will be based on. So that is going to be solely based on your feedback. I was originally looking at going through my next possible step will be looking at the game world and looking at Greyhawk and how I would select a starting location for this adventure, and maybe talk about how I would develop a an open world concept because I like to do that. I'll go into much more detail with that in episode 3. So thanks for joining. It is Friday, so for those of you getting ready for the weekend, enjoy your weekend. And as always, I look forward to seeing your comments in the comments section. I look forward to seeing more of you subscribe. I mean, the last 36 hours has been absolutely explosive. So I'm so appreciative of that. That this series of videos has really taken off, and hopefully we'll continue to keep on building on that. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen and at a convention sometime soon. So this would be day 2, the first full day, 2 weeks from now, at Philadelphia Area Game Expo, which I am a special guest there, and I will be running Shadow Dark while I'm there. I'm running 3 sessions of Shadow Dark. So if you are at the Philadelphia Area Game Expo in 2 weeks' time, be sure to look for me. I would love to have a chat, and then after the game sessions or in between or at lunchtime and everything, maybe we can sit down in the hotel lobby there and have a quick beer and a lunch or whatever, and or just chat at one of the open tables that are, generally speaking, around in the play area at the convention center as well. So you all have a great one. Take care.